slow roast it over the coals. PayPal is adding its PayPal USD stablecoin to the Solana blockchain. So back in August, PayPal issued PayPal USD on the Ethereum blockchain. So now it's also available on Solana. The difference between the two, Ethereum is like extremely programmable and has a very robust developer community. Solana is designed for speed and volume. So like massive amounts of transactions being processed very quickly. And that's the difference. And that's the future. There are coins. You can have like the same coin on multiple blockchains because different blockchains have different purposes or different, like they're best for different things. And this is very important because Web3 mass adoption is coming. Watch my special report that I'll link below. It's partially about how Uranus and Gemini is going to bring Web3 mass adoption. Web3 is everything on blockchain. So Web3 is your digital IDs. You'll need one to access anything. It's not going to be something the government makes you get. And everything is logged on a permanent ledger. And that's what your digital ID is. It's framed as data sovereignty, but it's also everything being logged permanently. And you'll be compelled to share that data if you need something. So the sovereignty comes with, if you have like pre-existing sovereignties, like with your money and other resources. But specifically, it's about what's going to spur that mass adoption, because nobody cares about Web3. And everybody at the biggest blockchain conference this past weekend is talking about how like people don't understand it, nobody cares, etc. The thing that's going to make you care is you'll be forced to get a Web3 account. You'll be forced to have some sort of digital ID to access your utilities accounts. So regular wires, which are made of copper, are more and more being replaced by fiber optic cables. And so telecommunications companies have all these just miles of wires that now have copper in them that can be recycled. So it's a news story that copper wires that are not being used might be worth over $7 billion to telecommunications companies. So keep that in mind, anything you throw away. This is not financial advice. The price of copper could also go up weirdly because copper is used for things like solar panels and batteries. According to the report, copper is 50% more expensive than it was around the pandemic. I don't know whether the price raised or dropped like pre-pandemic to post-pandemic, but that's interesting. The first pig to human liver transplant is doing, quote, very well. Fox put out an article that says titled, "This article is OpenAI training data." OpenAI issued or agreed on content deals with Vox Media and The Atlantic. And there's a story this week talking about how journalists are, quote, deeply troubled. This isn't news to me. I don't think the actual news is interesting. I'm just adding to building the case. Everything's going to be Web3. Web3 is blockchain and digital IDs. Those are the main things. Cryptocurrency is one use of blockchain, but the main value of blockchain is that it's a permanent digital ledger. And decentralization is used to mean like, I think in official blockchain parlance, if something is decentralized, then like the main ownership is like 20% and the rest is owned by the collective. But mainly what decentralized means, you could call something DeFi and still own like most of it, and it's still technically DeFi because it's on blockchain. And the decentralized part is that the data is decentralized. That's what makes it permanent. So you'd have to destroy everything on the earth, every computing capability on the planet to destroy the decentralized ledger. It's indestructible. Your digital ID uses blockchain technology. It permanently logs everything you do. You have data sovereignty because it is private. However, it's your permanent record. It's indestructible. And I'm not talking about all this like over and over again to be like Chicken Little. I'm just explaining what it is, because what it really is not really talked about in most of the popular cultural and professional contexts available to us. I watched a lot of live coverage from the Consensus Conference this weekend, and it was all about freedom and privacy, building bridges, and inspiration around new technology, which I'm not diminishing how exciting some of this stuff can be. It's exciting and very interesting. It's also what's coming. There's no avoiding it. And there's stuff around it that's just not being talked about. Or the Vox and Atlantic deals that were recently forged with OpenAI that are like causing commotion around journalistic circles, and also the Scarlett Johansson voice thing. All of this is going to, it's important that this be, it's important and useful to blockchain technology, because it'll be a part of what ushers everybody into Web3 and onto the blockchain. And specifically about like people's intellectual property is going to be used to train AI. And if you don't, you will be forced to mint an NFT of it if you want any sort of credit or micropayment. And you'll probably end up joining like creator collectives that have deals with these AI companies. It might not end up being like all that lucrative to have just like your own independent NFT. If you're a creator, if you're making work at all and putting it on the internet, and you know, sometimes if you make work and you don't want to put on the internet, you can't control whether it's put on the internet by someone else. There's a possibility it might not end up being all that like efficient or practical to just have your own independent NFTs. You're going to end up joining an agency or collective of some sort. And NFTs are more than just sharing JPEGs. NFTs are property rights. They're the future of property law. An NFT is your property rights to physical property and intellectual property and digital assets. So it's a sword in a video game, it's a JPEG you bought, it's the title to your house, and it's the title to that essay you wrote 2 years ago that's being trained on AI. NFT was made to be like, if you want to downplay the importance of something powerful, you ridicule it. We've seen it with like magical traditions. We've seen it with the importance of 5G, because you have to have, and there are lectures out there about like 6G and 7G. You have to have it covering the world. It's maybe not so great for us, and I'll get to some stories later that point back to that. But if you want to downplay the importance of like, it's maybe not amazing for our health, and it's absolutely crucial that it cover the entire world, because in order for blockchain to work for everyone, you have to be able to use it anywhere. Like the signals intelligence must be available in the absolute middle of nowhere. So yeah, NFTs were like pumped and then ridiculed, but they're the future of property law. So that the public discourse around it is like, oh, you're just buying JPEGs. That's not what it is. There was a huge data breach of Snowflake, which is a big data analytics company. They're a major darling of the stock market a couple years ago, or maybe 2021. That's more than a couple years ago. And this is linked to the Santander Bank, am I pronouncing that right? South American Bank breaches that were massive that also just happened, and the Ticketmaster data breach. So it's apparently all a part of one giant data breach. Watch my special report on the larger meaning of these data breaches and why it's important they remain in the news. I think it's easy for me to always take this like conspiratorial angle. And of course, there are like real hackers and real things getting hacked. There's a reason why it's important that this stuff is being talked about now. You can also watch my Mars and Gemini video from 2 years ago. It also talks a lot about this stuff, and it's still relevant, and it's going to be even more relevant this summer when Mars enters Gemini again. This will be Mars returning, the first time Mars has been in Gemini since I made that video. So there's like data breaches and how we need blockchain for security, and The Ticketmaster thing also links to your concert tickets will be NFTs, and then that goes on your permanent record of everything you've ever gone to. And there's another security story out this week that says that an event uncovered from October 2023 bricked 600,000 routers in a single attack. So just more, keep an eye on these cyber attack stories. They're going to create a groundswell, I think, that ends up with everyone moving. Like, you have to get a digital ID. You have to get a MetaMask. Digital ID is not something the government makes you get, although eventually you will need that too. I put this in my playlist, my tech news playlist this week. I started making some playlists. It's my content, and then it's like just some other stuff that I appreciate or draw from. There was a Morning Brew podcast interview with Gary Vee, and he noted that he was like, new technology is always demonized. People didn't want electricity. I'm paraphrasing something he said. It's a very interesting interview, and he has a lot of amazing insights. Again, I'm cynical, but also appreciative. I can't stop thinking about tech. It's very inspiring. But also, let's understand what it is and retain our humanity. Gary Vee mentions that people, when electricity came out, people didn't want electricity in their house because they, quote, thought it contained demons. And I'm not so sure it doesn't. And I could do a whole video about that, I guess. Maybe I will. We're electrical beings. Our bones contain piezoelectric energy. We are electrical beings, and we're very sensitive to electricity. And out in regular nature, when we're in tune with the living universe, we're a transmitter-receiver for information. And that's framed as woo, but it isn't. The most advanced technologists are thinking in this way. And I'll get to some more stories later. And for instance, the light bulb, amazing invention, has made a lot possible, but massively disrupts our circadian rhythms. I mentioned on Twitter a while ago that Pluto in Aquarius is Aquarius is in square to Taurus, where the moon exalts. And there's something is up with like our bodies and like feeling our best. And while there is an opportunity maybe to like engage in some extreme wellness, the wellness space is also being weaponized. So like there's weird stuff happening with like supplements, and I spoke about this in my special report, how your microbiome will be networked. That's Uranus and Cancer. This is not financial advice, but like keep track of like what money is to you now is going to be really different in 2 years, and it's going to be unrecognizable probably by 2032. And then like what wealth means to you. Because there's money, but it's increasingly like less and less a store of wealth. Gold was rare, hard to store. We replaced it with money that is like analogous to it. And now we're replacing that money, which is no longer analogous to gold anyway, with these programmable digital currencies. Watch my Jupiter and Gemini video for more about that. And then also in Hacking News, Hugging Face says that it has detected unauthorized access to its hosting platform. I could see Hugging Face absolutely being one of the first platforms that requires something like MetaMask to access. Like your regular login no longer works. You have to get a digital ID. And that's what I'm talking about. It's not, on the digital ID is great. Data sovereignty is wonderful. And digital ID is a permanent record that if you need approval from anybody for anything, you will be compared to share parts of that. Or like if you want a free Hulu account, you will be compelled to share that data for advertising purposes. That's how it's going to work, I think. And I'm not the only one who thinks that. I mean, I guess with the advertising stuff, maybe. But like, how else is it going to work? Cookies are gone. Free reign, Wild West, surveillance capitalism is like, everybody's rebelling against it and saying you needed a digital ID, but you'll be compelled to share that. If you don't want to issue micropayments, the only thing left that you have to bargain with is your data, which since you have a digital ID and it's all private, that inures you to doing everything online and allowing all of that to be logged permanently. Okay. There's a thing called LifeSeeker that can find you if you're lost in the woods. And it is my assumption that this technology was available anyway. So it's I'm having difficulty parsing this as a news story right now, other than to get us used to that idea. Obviously, everything, I'm here on this planet. I practice astrology. I have a diagram, so I have this like check and balance between what I've always been doing, and I discovered astrology kind of late. So I have a lot of like pre-astrology life to look at through the lens of astrology, and I wasn't like conducting myself with any knowledge that there's a diagram that says I'm going to conduct myself that way. But I'm here to be cynical, to be skeptical of a lot. And I know that the word skepticism doesn't necessarily go with astrology if you're a normcore STEM person, 100% materialist person, which is an asinine. But I'm here to offer that perspective. That's what I'm here to do. Even I know that like not everything is like has an ulterior motive, but there's also a combination. We live in an intelligent universe, and there are combinations of like genuine, wholehearted, innocent intentions merging with and like helping out larger narratives that are being steered. So there was a report from the New York Times saying lawyers are saying to plastic makers, prepare for astronomical, forever chemical lawsuits. And there's a reason I'm mentioning this on purpose right now. One thing, it connects with the whole like, okay, we're still not talking about how light bulbs are massively disruptive to our circadian rhythm. And when our circadian rhythm is disrupted in the way that light bulbs disrupt them, we miss out on powerful antioxidants while we sleep. Nobody's talking about that. I think it's good that lawyers are saying, preparing plastic makers for lawsuits. So what things are happening now that are like plastic? This headline, I have a feeling it's already happening. And now they're just saying it's happening. That's my cynicism I'm here to serve. Gene-edited salad greens are coming to U.S. stores this fall. They're mustard greens that have been genetically altered to make them more tasty. So one time I was at Disney World. That's right. And I'm not like a Disney adult, but I am. My moon is very connected to the 5th house, so I need anyway. There's this restaurant that's like in the like safari Africa version, like section of the park, or it's like it's not in the park, it's like just outside the park, but it's near the whole like wildlife reserve part of Disney World, and it's an African buffet. But the waiter we had was like and I think he's just like used to talking to people who don't like spicy food or something, but he kept saying how like everything is nice and mild for you. Also, one time when I was in Switzerland and I was enjoying alcohol, I ordered an absinthe and they gave it to me in like a super big gulp size full of ice, and I commented to my brother who lived there, like, what is up with this? And he was like, oh, it's because you're American. They think Americans just want a cup full of ice. This is the equivalent of that. These gene-edited salad greens are brought to you by biotech giant Bayer. There are many interesting things about Bayer's involvement, connection to some things in World War II, Bayer's connection to some things in America in around 1918. These are connections, obviously. And Bayer acquired Monsanto in 2018. So this is Monsanto. Again, who are we going to be suing later? Maybe no one. I think the suing of plastic companies is to create a distraction about like what else we might be doing. Because if we look at any point in history, there are valuable principles, and then there are also like antiquated ones that we no longer believe. So what are we doing now that we're going to look back on and be like, what idiots? Mostly I found that like there's like timeless knowledge that's downplayed now in favor of technology, but when we look back, it won't be the timeless knowledge, the things that like everyone has used and carried through millennia. It's the technology. It's the shiny new stuff that we're doing. That we're like, we are innovators. I know I don't have to say this. I know I'm just on a soapbox. So this is the headline. Swiss biocomputing startup has launched an online platform that provides remote access to 16 human brain organoids. It apparently uses 1 million times less power than traditional processing. And this is being called, in the headline, it's being called wetware. This is biohybrid computing. It's the future. The future? It's the future. This is where everything is headed. Biohybrid computing, social computing, spatial computing. So I haven't heard this term wetware, but I guess that's what it's being called instead of biohybrid computing. And then we'll have like persistent sensing of everything. Also, the future is photonics, so using light as signals, which, does that sound familiar? The Hindu tradition of astrology, Jyotish, translates as the science of light. Out of the University of Illinois, new photonic crystal approach can enable sensitive and affordable detection of biomarkers. So, photonics, biohybrid computing, light. So that makes it extra interesting that nobody is suing anybody over the amount of antioxidants we're not getting, even though many politicians talk about chronic disease. That's a major healthcare narrative. We're not talking about how the powerful antioxidants that our bodies produce on their own are not being produced because of light, artificial light. Out of the Chinese Academy of Sciences, there's a new type of hologram called a meta-hologram, and it has uses in AR and VR, obviously, information storage, and image encryption. And if anybody can explain to me clearly, to my satisfaction, which is at my discretion, what a meta-hologram is, I will mail you a box of neon crayons. A piece of a conversation caught my attention from an interview from this past weekend's Consensus Blockchain Conference. It was an interview with fiction writer Neal Stephenson, and the interviewer says, and I'm quoting, 10 years before Bitcoin, Cryptonomicon, which is a book by Neal Stephenson, predicted cryptocurrency, but my take on the novel was that it was much more about information theory and information control. Looking back, what aspects of cryptocurrency and information theory did Cryptonomicon get right, and what did it miss? I thought the question was interesting because it says that in the novel, Cryptonomicon, the narrative around crypto and digital money was more about, quote, information theory and information control. And I don't think that cryptocurrency and blockchain technologies and tokenomics are not about that. I think they're all about that. And also, Neal Stephenson is regarded as one of the fathers of the modern metaverse, and something he conceptualized in his novel is that in the metaverse, you might end up running someone else's code on your computer, and so interoperability is important. So understanding that, like, what a metaverse is interconnected, a part of, like, it's a verse. It's not like a meta pod. Each experience should be able to connect with other experiences. And that's why blockchain and crypto are intimately connected with the idea of a metaverse. Code Academy defines a metaverse as a Web3, so that's blockchain technology, like a Web3 platform that is built around a goal. So metaverse doesn't just mean like a fun VR experience. It means a blockchain, something that's built using Web3 technologies, which is blockchain, and something that must be accessed with a digital ID. First thing Monday, it's really midnight. It's Sunday night. It's now. Mercury enters Gemini. Everything is going to start to move much more quickly, especially in the part of your chart that Mercury rules. So we have like the nerdy CEO is in town, and Jupiter in Gemini, who's trying to Robert California everything, is going to be subject to some rationality, some we can't just believe, we need the facts. that doesn't work for Jupiter, and Jupiter is necessary for all of us, that type of optimism, but also so are the facts. Getting, it's not enough to just believe your package will arrive, will get from one place to another. Jupiter would be like, it'll get there if we just believe. That's very helpful in many contexts, and it's not unhelpful to like add it to your logistics. Rational stuff isn't great for Jupiter. We do have Jupiter working for Mercury. Mercury's home, able to like tell Jupiter what to do. And this like coherence with all the details and just like a great deal of mental energy going on, a great deal of interactivity. This will apply to whatever house Gemini is in your chart. So if you know your rising sign, count to wherever Gemini is. And if you don't know how to read your own chart, you can get my free course if you sign up for my emails. And you can just get the links and then go away. But my emails are good. They're not like, they're better than any other emails you subscribe to. And I bet you subscribe to a lot of newsletters that you don't read. So delete those and just subscribe to mine. And All Day Monday is kind of interesting because there's like a Pluto signature. The moon pings Pluto shortly after Mercury enters Gemini. And then at night on Monday, Mercury trines Pluto. So axial alignments of Mercury and Pluto, I think of a lot of like whistleblowing. And that could still be with this trine to Pluto, like calling out, speaking truth to power. However, I think, and we also have Mercury conjoining Jupiter shortly afterwards. So I think there might be something underhanded and tremendously powerful about what's going on Monday that maybe we won't be able to see. Either we won't be able to see it, we won't know about it till later, or it will get blown out of proportion. Something small gets blown out of proportion. And we have Jupiter helping, so it could go either way. And probably both things will happen. There will probably be versions of things that get blown out of proportion. Maybe some sort of like optimism around technology gets blown out of proportion. Since this happens on Monday, we just had the consensus blockchain conference this past weekend, and I did see a lot of that. I did see a lot of like optimism. Much of it is warranted, and much of it is like not taking into account the darker sides of these technologies. Not to be someone who's like, I don't want electricity in my house because it's demons. There's a lot of genuine good and useful stuff happening. Mercury trining Pluto on Monday while applying to Jupiter. I could also see it being like some sort of very positive announcement around technology, very positive communication around technology that doesn't talk about the more corrupt or like underhanded intentions or ways it's going to be used. That is definitely the consensus conference on this past weekend, although Mercury was still in Taurus. And then we also have Venus in Gemini conjoining the Sun in the morning on Tuesday. And I could see this as a part of what's going on with Mercury and Pluto and Jupiter on Monday as well. It's happening in the same neighborhood. And Venus is direct. So this is the exterior conjunction with the Sun. And we're like looking forward to what we want and what we like and what we want to like in the future. Who we want to be as it's described by like our collection of NFTs that we'll show off in a year, because that will be a thing. You will only be known by your collection of NFTs. We have versions of that now, obviously. Even before technology, we had superficial ways of signaling to people and of knowing other people. An exterior conjunction of Venus with the Sun is often about the future or the wide-ranging scope of our tastes and desires. But this particular Venus-Sun conjunction is even more flavored by the future. Because Mercury is there, because Jupiter is there, and because Uranus will be moving into Gemini next year. All of this is teeing up the Uranus and Gemini stuff. So in the broad world and that conference this past weekend, I see a lot of like hype and optimism around the future and technology and how we'll interact. Because Gemini is people interacting with each other, and Gemini is tokenomics. It's tokenization. we'll see that when Uranus comes through and makes it even more real. So mostly I guess I'm connecting this Venus cazimi with everything I've been talking about with blockchain, and how there are absolutely some beautiful potentials, but there are also some not as beautiful potentials actively are not being talked about by the people building the stuff. And a lot of them don't even understand that. Like I used to be, like in 2018, I was all about blockchain and crypto as like the new freedom technology. So everything about this like optimism around new technology and maybe some underlying stuff that's not being acknowledged as it's trining Pluto and it's connected, it's happening in the same house as like Mercury trining Pluto and Mercury conjoining Jupiter and Jupiter having just trined Pluto and Jupiter here to like build hype about new technology. There's something underlying, there's something under the hood that you're either not looking at or someone else is not being forthright with you about the future or what the future could be, or the different ways that the things you're excited about could be leveraged. Or there's just like some darkness, like a shadow side to what you want that you refuse to look at. It could be like any one or all of these things combined. And look back at August of 2023, we had Venus's interior conjunction with the sun, at which time you might have been more focused on like, do you even like what you like anymore? There are things you thought you liked that now you're not into. You're revisiting things you used to like to see if you still like them, or if maybe you like them again, or you're getting insights. I got some weird insights about like music that I was listening to 8 years before. So I mentioned that in contrast with what this is. This is very like outward reaching. Also note for all of this, the moon is waning. It's almost dark. So all of this is in the spirit of like wrapping up and finishing actual projects or actual ways of thinking and communicating and interacting. Also on Tuesday, the moon ends up conjoining Uranus later in the day, which is ruled by Venus just having had her conjunction with the sun. So there might be some surprise insights or unexpected things. On Wednesday, the moon is in Gemini. So the Monday stuff is brightened and has exclamation marks around it for Wednesday. And Wednesday seems, for the most part, it starts out really good. And this could also, Tuesday also has, the end of Tuesday has some aspects applying after that. That from Uranus that mostly come Wednesday morning, but they're applying on Tuesday. So Tuesday could have maybe some sort of happy ending because late at night / early in the morning on Wednesday, we have the moon trining. The moon enters Gemini and then trines Neptune, conjoins Jupiter, and conjoins Venus. So yeah, Wednesday could start out pretty well. Thinking more about the hype. If you're getting people's opinions, like Wednesday is a day of hype. And it's a day of closing out the old, because Wednesday night is technically the darkest of the dark moon, which goes exact Thursday morning. So by Thursday late morning, early afternoon, we'll have a waxing moon in Gemini. So this dark moon in Gemini is expending energy that culminated, that like was at its height, the end of November of last year, 2023. And what we start laying the groundwork for now in this new Gemini lunar cycle, it'll culminate around December 15th of this year with the full moon in Gemini. And that's also the day that Mercury stations direct. So that will be end of November through mid-December is our winter Mercury retrograde. That will probably have something to do with what you're laying the groundwork for now in the realm of Gemini. And also the Sagittarius topics in your life will be activated at that time. So keep an eye on now in terms of like what's coming up for you late November, early December, and over the holidays. There's an interesting connection there. You know, there's a lot about Gemini that's like curiosity and too much information, and but this full moon has to do with like being able to contain and deal with contradictions and dualities. Gemini were the twins, but they weren't two twins living on Earth. One of them lived in the underworld, in the afterlife. So we're dealing with this likeness, but also distinct difference. I think that also connects with what's going on with Pluto and Aquarius, because Pluto and Aquarius is like leveraging the line in the sand and divisiveness. That's very helpful to technology in a lot of ways. Are you into this or this? If you're like slightly brush against like one thing, then that means you get the severe label. I have a whole playlist on Pluto and Aquarius stuff now. That's like my content, and then other stuff I think connects. I just started building these playlists, so right now it's like 2% of what I think connects. But so Thursday, the moon is waxing, and the moon squares Saturn in the morning, so that's sort of like a hump to get over. The moon wanting to be rational and connect with people, and Saturn in Gemini turning it all into blobs, feeling like maybe stuck, waterlogged. But early in the morning on Friday, so I'm putting this into Thursday because it's applying, the moon in Gemini is sextiling Mars in Aries. So Thursday, after the moon is done squaring Saturn, is a good day to like step on the gas. So my pick for getting things done, Thursday. And Friday, the moon, after it sextiles Mars exactly, the moon squares Neptune. So the moon in Gemini is squaring Neptune early in the morning. And then also early in the morning, just like a few minutes later, like 20 minutes later, the moon moves into Cancer. So you might end up sleeping in on Friday. So get things done on Thursday and maybe do the extra time, spend the extra time. I'm not always like a huge fan of like working overtime, even though I have Mars in the 6th. So that is what I do. That makes me like hyper aware of the potential for burnout. On Thursday, if you can plan to like just spend the extra time to get things done, because Friday you're not going to want to get up early and continue, I don't think. So just, wrapping everything up on Thursday. Take the extra time to do that, even if you have to work a few extra hours, and always be mindful of burnout. Don't burn yourself out. Leave that to me to burn myself out. And so the moon is in Cancer for most of Friday. And also, while this happens exact on Saturday in the middle of the night, if you're in North America, Venus is going to square Saturn on Friday. So we're feeling good and like nourished emotionally and physically, hopefully, with the moon in Cancer. But feelings could also be heightened, and Venus is squaring Saturn while the moon is waxing. So there might be some like fears or lack of intimacy or inability to be intimate, potentially, that might cause some trouble. Like, don't go looking for a ton of affection on Friday unless it's with someone you have like a long-term history with, who you really trust. Then maybe, things might just be like more serious than you want them to be on Friday. And Venus Saturn signatures recently, my keywords that I want to talk about now are all about managing expectations. Don't overpromise, underdeliver is a good piece of advice for when Venus is squaring Saturn, and that'll be very up on Friday. The moon, freshly entered into Cancer, will be like trining Saturn. So the moon, activator of the zodiac, is helping Saturn more than the moon is helping Venus. So our wanting to like experience pleasure might feel undermined by like needs and what needs doing. Another thing I see on Friday is like there could be like a fear of vulnerability. And the moon's loosely trining Saturn, so the moon can be vulnerable. What we need being at this moment, like discipline and to make sure we deliver on what's expected. In the midst of making sure all that happens, understanding that we're human, we make mistakes, we all have embarrassing things about us. And if we do fall short in the managing expectations, or we expect too much affection or something and we haven't communicated that, just know that, like, give each other a break. Give each other a break on Friday. Cut each other some slack. Everyone is experiencing some kind of difficulty, and if you think someone has it good or someone has you under their thumb, opening up and being vulnerable, which will not probably be what you want to do, could help to level the playing field a little bit and remind us that we're all on this journey living as like energy imprinted as this like human body. That's it. I thought I had something more to say, but that's it. So Saturday, we're coming off of that Venus-Saturn square. So that will have happened, and we might be like still experiencing whatever that was. And the moon exactly trines Saturn in the afternoon on Saturday. So at least, if this is going to happen, at least the moon is in domicile. A dignified moon is trining Saturn. The activator of the zodiac is helping the Saturn, the malefic, the sad, heavy, waterlogged part of this. And at night, Mars moves into Taurus. Things might, whatever's going on in Aries might come to a halt. So hopefully you've had irons in the fire, because I guess the fire is going to be turned down to coals. And it's not a time to start a fire anymore. It's a time to like slow roast it over the coals. So if you have to start a fire, you're going to be really frustrated because you'll have like a Bic lighter under a giant piece of wood. And you're going to maybe try to do clever things and they're not going to work. Maybe persistence, courage, those things will help you. Resist the urge with whatever the Mars thing is, whatever Mars is for you in your chart. Resist the urge to like pivot and try to like not do the hard, boring work. Again, hopefully you have some hot coals. You don't have to light a fire using your like little book of matches trying to light a whole log in the wind of like all the Mercury Gemini stuff happening. Something that you could do with Mars and Taurus is like maybe you can identify some items that could help you. So if you're trying to light this fire using a matchbook in the wind, I once took a short workshop on how to like light a fire without matches or a lighter. You don't just like rub two sticks together. You know, you need like little fuzzy thin bits of flammable stuff that you'll like smoke up, and then you're like adding larger and larger things around it as the fire grows. So understanding what technologies you need, like that's not necessarily a tool, that's a technology, how to build a fire with no matches. But Mars and Taurus could help, as like Taurus is the sommelier of the zodiac. Taurus knows like materials and items and resources needed to feel good. So Mars, on a mission, in Taurus, the one thing it could be good at is like understanding what items you might need in your inventory. But now whatever's going on with Mars is like slow and steady. The moon does sextile Uranus late at night on Saturday / early Sunday morning. So maybe you do it's the moon sextiling Uranus in Taurus where Mars is now. So you might get an insight about how to deal with this, because Mars is traditionally considered in detriment in Taurus. It's not. Mars doesn't like to be in like a tree trunk, doing like the tree trunk method of growth, which is slow but robust. Mars doesn't like to be slow unless it's in Capricorn, but that's a different type of slow. It's more cool. On Sunday, and this is also applying on Saturday, the moon squares Saturn. So the sun's conjunction with Saturn in Pisces was in late February. This is the opening square, so now we're going to be challenged. Whatever area of your life Pisces is, that's where like the new Sun-Saturn cycle opened. That's a part of your chart that's like Saturn is coming through and like saying no to things and putting up walls and also making things real in the Pisces part of your chart. And with the Sun, giving vital force to things. It's this dance between like, Saturn is darkness and realness. The Sun is like light and leadership. Something that the Sun and Saturn kind of have in common is this like, it's like coordination. So that's helpful for making things real. You need like you need a coordinating force instead of just like saying things no and turning things to stone like Saturn. But this is a part in that journey that did a browser refresh back in February. You'll be tested to see like what breaks and what survives moving forward. So you'll probably feel that all week and all next week, but it's exact early in the morning on Sunday. In the afternoon on Sunday, the moon moves into Leo. So that's exciting. That's sextiling, all the stuff happening in Gemini. So there'll be a lot of energy, but it's also opposing Pluto. As we're moving into the summer, anytime the moon's in Leo, we can look at what foreshadowing might be happening for July, what little things are happening that might come back up for the summer, for like late summer, and also for December, because we have Mars is stationing retrograde in Leo in December. What's set up in July that is then given like angry red laser eyes in December? And Sunday's complicated. There's just like a lot of energy, so it might be kind of irritating at first because the moon is squaring Mars in Taurus. So that's really annoying. And then opposing Pluto, which is also squaring Mars in Taurus. So it might just be like too much energy, too hot on Sunday. But it all works out around dinner time / after dinner dessert. The moon sextiles Jupiter. And there's a lot going on next week with that. So Sunday's kind of foreshadowing for Monday and Tuesday also. Energetic frustration signatures. So on Sunday, don't rage quit. Thanks for watching, and remember your Wi-Fi is a camera that can see through walls.